Okay, year 11, you're now on the home straight. You've done your writing question 1, question 2 and question 4. So you're now on to question 3. So if you remember from the little overview at the start, question 3 asks you about language. Now, this is worth 12 marks. So it's how does the writer use language to, and in this case it's to describe the storm. Now, you will always be referred to a really specific section of one of the texts. So this isn't a comparative question. This is only about one. So you're looking at source A in this case, but always check that carefully. And you're looking at lines 13 to 23 in your extract. So how does the writer use language to describe the storm? You should be spending about 15 minutes on this question, and you're looking to write at least 2 what, how, why paragraphs. If you can get a third one in there, that would be great to just show that range. As we've done for the previous questions, I'm going to show you some sample answers and look at why they got the marks that they get. So same situation as before, you've got the criteria down the left hand side, the candidate's work appears on the right hand side. So this is just like what the examiners have when they mark your work. And you can see there are 3 bullet points in the criteria. The first one is about commenting on language. So a simple comment, attempting to comment, a clear comment, and explaining clearly what the effects of the writer's choices are. The second bullet point is about textual detail, so that's your quotations, your references. And the final bullet point is about your use of subject terminology, so that's very much the how part of your answer. So you've got your evidence, your terminology, and then the explanation as to why. What effect does that have on the reader? How does it position the reader? So that's how you get your marks. So we're going to start with this answer here, looking at how it fulfills the criteria. So we've got quite a brief answer to start off with. The writer describes how the storm moved into the camp. He uses the word whip to tell us that it was going fast. So we've got a quotation, we have got a textual reference, and this candidate has absolutely rightly identified that that's a good word to select, a good aspect of the text to zoom in on. Unfortunately, they have referred to it as a word rather than using their subject terminology and referring to it as a verb. There's a little bit of an explanation as to the effect, saying that it tells us that it's going fast, but there's much more to scope to dig there, isn't there? So that is why this answer would get a band 1. But the idea is good, and as I show you the other answers, the band 2, 3 and 4 ones, I want you to see it's the same idea, it's just the detail that's there and the features of the answer. The idea is the same. So this is the next one. The writer says that the storm whipped into camp, and the verb. So there you go. Straight away, we've got more, more consistent subject terminology. So the verb whipped tells us how it blew in quickly. Okay, so very similar to the first answer at that point, but look what this one does extra. It makes us think that the storm was dangerous. So now we're getting a bit of an explanation as to what the effect of that language choice was on the reader. Later, the writer says that the storm had the mountain in its grip. So really nicely, the way they've dropped those quotations in, they've embedded those quotations into their answer. It sounds like a monster. Then the storm took control, so it sounds as if it's in charge of what's happening. Now, there's a brilliant idea in the middle of that somewhere, but it's just not fully explored. There needs to be an identification that this storm is being personified. It's been made to seem like a living creature. This idea that it's got the mountain in its grip, that it's taking control. But again, the idea is there. It's just not fully developed, and that's why that answer would get you a band 2. Have a look at this one. The writer describes the violence of the storm through a number of verbs. So we've got a trend there. We've got a bit of a pattern that this candidate spotted, that this writer is using verbs to create this violent atmosphere. He says that the wind whipped into camp, and the word whipped suggests something brutal and aggressive. Now, they've used word, which you might be thinking, well, that was in the band 1 answer. They have identified it as a verb earlier, though, so the examiner would give them that credit. It implies the speed of the storm, and also that the wind is determined to beat them, almost as if it's forcing them off the mountain. So there's an understanding there as to the effect. Also, the phrase "in a blinding fury of driving snow" suggests that the storm is angry and deliberately targeting them so that they cannot see. The use of personification, there we go, that's what we were looking for in that band 2 answer. The use of personification to describe the storm holding the mountain in its grip conveys how it's taken control. and makes the reader fear for the safety of the climbers as they are in the hands of this powerful monster. There's a nice little bit there about audience positioning, so it makes the reader fear. So there's a sense of understanding of the effect, and it's, you know, if you look at that criteria, it's really clear, it's really relevant, explained clearly. There's a range of textual detail, lots of quotations that are all relevant there, and it's really clear and accurate use of subject terminology. So we've referenced verbs and personification in there. So band 3, there you go. Right, last one. So no surprises what we're looking at here in terms of the quality. So let's have a little look. Right, the writer uses a long, complex sentence to suggest the way in which the seemingly never-ending storm races through the camp, leaving chaos and destruction in its wake. Now, that's quite an interesting one. Sentence structure can be quite a tricky thing to comment on, and I would only recommend it if you can see a really clear effect. So this candidate spotted that the structure of that sentence mirrors almost the movement of the storm. So it's a long sentence showing that the storm is incessant, that it's never ending. So that's a really valid point to make. An extended metaphor of violence. So we've got, again, more subject terminology. An extended metaphor of violence is used with a series of verbs, such as whipped, plunging and swept, all of which convey the power of the storm and the way in which it is seen as a vicious and brutal force of nature. The writer personifies, so look how much subject terminology is in here, really precise, personifies the storm as trying to destroy the camp in a blinding fury of driving snow. This suggests that the storm has embarked on a deliberate and savage attack. Mother Nature seems so enraged by their presence on the mountain that her anger is all-consuming, depriving them of sight and possibly cutting them off from one another. This premeditated action is further enforced as the storm takes the mountain in its grip, which makes us visualise some powerful and menacing creature intent on keeping them in its clutches. So again, the idea that's in there isn't that different to the one that was in band 1. It's the clarity and the depth of that digging. So no surprises, that one would be your band 4. Okay. So you've now seen through all 4 of the reading questions, and you've seen the qualities of different answers. Now, whilst those answers are very specific to those snow texts, the skills that you've seen in there can be applied to any text. So in the pack that you've got, there are some other papers. There's a cyclist one, there's a one about homework, there's a one about table manners. Have a look at those other ones, have a go at them with these skills in mind, and even look back at these sample answers that are in your pack to identify the skills and see if your answers to the other papers match up. Okay, thanks very much, Year 11.